There was really no signs of neurological function.
Imagine waking up after being declared unalive after 18 hours. That's exactly what happened in May of 2008. Velma Thomas would soon go down in history as one of the most shocking medical cases ever reported. Velma was hospitalized after experiencing symptoms of a heart attack. Little did anyone know her story was about to become the stuff of legends. Velma's heart stopped beating 3 times. Despite doctors' best efforts, there were no measurable brain waves for more than 17 hours. Doctors would try everything to save her, including hypothermia in a desperate attempt to lower her body temperature and stimulate her brain. But at the time, nothing worked. Eventually, her family would be told that she passed away, and they would say their tearful, heartbreaking goodbyes.
Her hands were hard, her toes were hardened, and her toes were curling back. Death had set in.
Her family would soon leave to start making funeral plans. The medical team began preparing to remove her organs for donation. But just when all hope seemed lost, something very unusual happened. 10 minutes after the nurses removed her breathing tubes, Velma would wake up and start breathing on her own. Her son, Tim Thomas, was in utter disbelief. Tim had left the hospital convinced that his mother was gone forever. Yet shortly after he left, Tim would receive an unimaginable call. He would be told that his mother had woken up. The hospital staff would stand there in shock as Velma moved her arms and asked for her son. Velma would soon walk away from the episode with both her life and her organs intact. Velma actually holds the record time for recovering from clinical death, because apparently that's a thing. While rare, these incidents do occur every now and then, and are often referred to as Lazarus syndrome. It's the spontaneous return of a normal cardiac rhythm after failed attempts at resuscitation, and cases are not well understood. While there have been many other medical marvels like Velma's, her 17-hour journey into the afterlife makes her story truly one in a million. Next up, we have the shocking tale of a man that woke up during his own autopsy. In 2007, a 33-year-old man named Carlos Camejo would find himself in a bizarre and terrifying situation. Carlos would soon be involved in a terrible highway accident near Caracas, where he would be declared unalived and taken to the morgue. As medical examiners made an incision in Carlos's face, they noticed something very odd. He was bleeding, which typically corpses do not do. Realizing they had made a grave mistake, they quickly began stitching up the incision. Carlos would later recount waking up because the pain was unbearable. Waking up in the morgue to excruciating pain might not be the best way to start your day. Surrounded by the dead, he found himself in a place where no living person should be. Being alive but being unable to move or speak is you're mistaken for dead. Soon afterwards, his wife would arrive at the morgue to identify his body. She was bracing for the worst, but what she saw was beyond her wildest expectations. Instead of seeing her husband's corpse, she found a very much alive Carlos in one of the corridors. This is a reminder that sometimes the difference between life and death can be disturbingly thin.
They told us that he was gone. There was nothing that they could do.
On September 26, 2021, 15-year-old Torianto Jr. Brinson would be involved in a terrible automobile accident. He would be ejected out of a car window on impact in Missouri City, Texas, where it was later confirmed that he had indeed passed away. However, Brinson's mother would refuse to accept the news of her son's passing, as she began praying for him next to his bedside.
And I was holding his hand, and I prayed, and then I told him, I said, Junior, I need you. And probably like a minute or so later, I felt his hand move.
That small bit of activity would be enough to allow him to be taken into surgery immediately. Brinson would suffer severe brain damage as a result of the accident and would go on to undergo a total of 4 brain surgeries. He would spend 21 months in a coma and several months in a semi-coma before being transferred to a rehab facility. Brinson went on to excel in school and even play on his high school basketball team. Against all odds, he would make a remarkable recovery, turning a tale of despair into incredible triumph. Next, we have an eerie story that sounds like it's straight out of a Stephen King novel. Imagine walking into your kitchen and discovering your recently deceased grandmother cooking a meal. That Stephen King scenario actually happened to a Chinese family after 95-year-old Li Shufeng climbed out of her unsealed coffin 6 days after she had been found deceased in her bedroom. After Shufeng suffered what was believed to be a fatal head injury, friends and family gather believing they were to say their final goodbyes. Plans would be made for her funeral, including an in-home wake for friends and family. After waking from what doctors described as an artificial death, and what her family would probably call the reason we all soiled ourselves. Not the best way to meet your resurrected grandmother now. The villagers would be stunned to find Zhu Feng cooking chicken. She had slept for a long time, and after waking up, she felt so hungry she wanted to cook and eat something. The unexpected revival of the dead essentially turned a moment of grief into surreal disbelief and celebration. Next, we have the story of a 1600s failed execution. Anne Green was a young Oxfordshire woman employed in the service of Thomas Reed. In the spring of 1650, while in her early 20s, she would be seduced and impregnated by Reed's 16-year-old grandson, Geoffrey. 6 months later, Anne would go into labor while stirring a vat of malt. Green would later miscarry in the lavatory, but it would soon be discovered and reported to her master. At a time when justice was swift and often brutal, Anne Green would find herself at the mercy of a society quick to condemn. Her execution was set to take place on December 14th, 1650. Like many other hangings of that time, it would not proceed well. She was turned off the ladder, hanging by the neck for almost a half hour, some of her friends and others hanging with all their weight upon her leg, lifting her up and then pulling her down again with a sudden jerk. Trying to end her pain quickly, the undersheriff, fearing they might break the rope, forbade them to continue. Eventually, Green would appear to expire and be cut down. Her body would be given to William Petty, a surgeon and anatomical researcher based in Oxford. It would appear that she was indeed breathing. This would soon be noticed by a bystander who thought to end her suffering, as he stomped on her chest and stomach with all the force he could. Dr. Petty would arrive shortly after and immediately begin to revive Green, dosing her with hot and cold cordials and giving her a hot enema. Sounds lovely, right? Well, all of this seems pretty horrible. I'm not quite sure which part of this story is worse. However, Green would recover, and within days, she would be well enough to eat chicken. I guess that's the primary meal of choice when you return from the dead. Petty and others would soon lobby the Oxford court for a pardon. This would be readily ordained, not least because her former employer and chief prosecutor, Sir Thomas Reed, had passed away 3 days after Green's hanging. Green would go on to marry and have 3 more children. Finally, we have the tale of a man that woke up in a morgue after being declared dead from drinking too much vodka. Reports from the Polish press would state that a mortuary guard thought kids had broken into the morgue. This report came from a Polish news source concerning a 25-year-old man. This man, named Kamil, would be pronounced dead from cardiac arrest. But when he would come to find himself in the morgue, he apparently would go back to the pub in the small town of Kamienna Gora. Kamil was originally at the tavern when he felt ill. He would then go outside where he collapsed. Kamil would remain unconscious at the scene where he collapsed, and also at the hospital where attempts were made to revive him. It wasn't much later when a guard would begin hearing sounds coming from the morgue. When the guard opened up one of the lockers, he found the deceased naked corpse, who then asked him for a blanket. Having risen from the dead, Kamil would be given a quick checkup, and he would soon return home via the pub. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or perhaps thirsty for another drink. Kamil's story is a reminder to drink responsibly, unless you want to wake up naked in a fridge asking for a blanket. Next time you're having a bad day, think of these people that came back from the dead. If these people can come back from the dead, you can probably handle that load of laundry that's been sitting there for a while. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel for more scary tales of death and other things. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.